Hello, good afternoon everyone. I'm writer coach Tony and I'm back to answering some of the questions that um, some of my readers, some of my YouTube viewers have been asking me. So tonight, this afternoon, I'm going to answer a question asked by Marlon Munoz from Mexico, Pampanga. And he was asking, Sir, need lang akong ideas paano gawing statement of the problem at research gap. So it's a very common question, how to make the statement of the problem and what is a research gap. So let's begin with the research gap. So since you're in school and you're doing your degree, your master's degree, so you are expected to do research work. And in research work, there are so many topics out there. Most of those topics have a research gap. So research gap just means it's something in that field that hasn't yet been fully answered, or there are no clear conclusions yet about that subject. So there is a research gap there where researchers like you have to do some research on and do some studies and eventually come out with conclusions to erase the research gap. So how do you look for a research gap? So what I've been teaching my students for years is usually the first thing you do when you do research is to do your review of related literature. So I suggest that you go over maybe 10 to 20. So you already have a title, a working title. Try to look for 10 or to 20 different studies which are related to your study. And of course, choose the ones closest to it. When you read those studies, you go to the recommendations part, because that's where I get my research gap. Because the recommendations part has the the researcher writes, for further studies, I recommend that blank 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 blank. So those are the research gaps which you can study. It just means that that part of the study, the researcher was not able to do it because maybe of time constraints, budget constraints, and many other reasons. So that's why he or she is asking other researchers to complete that part of the research gap. So that's usually where I direct my students. So look at the recommendations of the studies that you're interested in. The researchers will mention a research gap which has to be filled. So that's one way. Another way is you can go through current studies now, and then you can just tweak the respondents. For example, if the studies on that field has been done on female students, then maybe you can do a study on male students, or the different grade levels. Because even in the grade levels, there are so many factors that you can study on, based on the wealth of the students, their backgrounds, their parents' backgrounds. So there's actually a wealth of factors that you can include in your study. I'm referring more to those who are taking up education as their master's degree. Okay, so these guys are the ones I have trained most. Those who are in the field of education, and some in business administration. But the key always is to look for the research gap and identify it. So that's where you can look in the recommendations part of the journal article. You check, and then if you like it, and if you feel you can do it, that can be your research. And then of course you can also tweak, as I said, the respondents, based on the existing studies that you feel you're interested in doing. So once you have done your research gap, you already have your title, how do you do your statement of the problem? So here, at this point, you haven't really decided yet what methodology to use. No? So a good working statement of the problem um, will be based on your methodology. Will you do interviews? Will you do survey questionnaires? So will you do case studies? So I'm more referring to, again, to those who are studying in the field of education, because I've been bashed before, because some methodologies do not apply to other courses. Yes, it's true. Now, if you're doing engineering, if you're doing science, there are so many other types of methodologies. So what I'm referring here is mostly geared towards students who are taking their masters in education. So yes, there are other methodologies, but for here, it's for those who are taking up education. So in the statement of the problem, there are many verbs you can use. You can go to the thesaurus, you can type the word investigate, and you can see all the other verbs that you can see. That you have assess, investigate, find out, explore, examine. So all these verbs can help you identify what you want to do with the study. So at the back of your mind, try to decide whether you want to do interviews, case studies, which are usually qualitative, instead of giving a survey questionnaire, which is quantitative. No? That means you'd have to use statistics in showing your results. So either way, you can do both. You can do either of the two. No? So it's okay to do either of the two methodologies. So how do you make a good statement of the problem? Make sure it encompasses everything in your study. A good one would be you have a good description of your respondents. No? So respondents are the ones who answer your study. So it can be a group of principals, it can be a group of students. So the more varied the composition of your respondents, the better for your study, because you have to describe them. No? Then another one would be to use the appropriate statistical method. If you're using quantitative, there's a list of different statistical formulas that you will learn later on, which your statistician teacher will teach you. So as you go, you can choose which of them is most appropriate for your study. And of course, you can ask the help of your advisor also, which of these statistical formulas you can use. So, kasi depende talaga sa raw data that you get. If you use mean, then you have to use this formula. If you get frequency, it's better to use this formula. And then if you're your supervisor will guide you, so don't worry about it. So that's two already, no? Respondents, the statistical formula, because you want to know if there's a significant relationship between the variables in your study. So that one way of finding that out is through statistics. And of course, there's also you have to mention, I think usually in the last part, why your study is important. No? What can your study contribute to your field? So that's the last part. So that part can either be something tangible, no? Because some people they make a plan, no? Something like that, no? They come out with a like some of them even come out with a book or a plan for their study. It all depends on you, no? If you have enough time to do that, then fantastic. If not, then you can just show the results of the study. So for me, it's a different case for everyone. So just concentrate on what you want to study, and then check your time frame because you have to graduate. So you have to make sure your study is done within a certain period of time. And then what else? Your statement of the problem should also, for me, a good statement of the problem should also give a clear picture of what's happening. So you have already the statistics, you have the respondents, then you can also, there's a part there where you can give a clear picture of what's happening currently in that field. Usually the data here comes from qualitative, through the analysis, through the interviews. The idea here is to give a clear picture of your problem to the panel. If you can do that, then that would be great, Kasi it would your analysis of the situation would be buffered by the statistical data that you got, plus the quality of your respondents, the quality of your methodology. So all in all, when you write the statement of the problem, usually you can think of 4 verbs. Check your thesaurus, look for verbs there that you intend to do in your thesis. If you decided on these verbs, then you can have your supervisor check it para naman they can find out if you are actually able to do all 3 or 4 statement of the problems. Because you might be, so my students are so ambitious, they do so many things at the same time. So the key here is just to focus on one area, focus on a certain research gap, and get the most information you can from it through survey questionnaires, through interviews, and then of course do the analysis, which I think is the most important part of your study, the analysis part. So I hope this answers my question, Marlon's question. He was asking about the research gap and then writing a statement of the problem. So I hope this answers his question. When you do your statement of the problem, don't worry, it's always being tweaked. It's not yet final. It only becomes final when you really write your first 3 chapters, because everything takes form, But as you're still thinking about it, it will eventually have its own form. So make sure it's something that you can do on time, something that can produce results, and something that can contribute something to your field of study. So with that, I want to end my vlog. I hope Marlon gets to learn something from this. Not only him, but also the rest. Please follow me on my social media. It's written down there. And then please subscribe to my channel, Writer Coach Tony. Thank you very much for your time, and keep safe, everyone.